Hi, my name is Sam Johnson and I am a voice teacher. Today I will be reacting to and analyzing Matt Corby performing Brother. This video is sponsored by Soundcore and their brand new Liberty Air 2 Pro true wireless headphones. The Liberty Air 2 Pros have been endorsed by 10 Grammy-winning artists, including Neo, who is a personal favorite of mine, and they endorsed them because they sound really good. I've been wearing these headphones around the house this last week. I think they just have a really nice, authentic, clean sound. And you can adjust their settings to fit your needs by using their accompanying app. In that app, there's a customizable EQ, and you can also adjust which of the 3 active noise cancellation modes you'd like to use. There's outdoor mode for when you're walking around a busy city, there's transport mode to block out the sound of a loud airplane, and there's indoor mode which suits quieter locations while still blocking out distracting sounds. I also love that Soundcore has partnered with Music Cares, which is a charity for struggling musicians that gives assistance for mental health, for general health, and for financial problems. I'm also obsessed with how this case works. It's just so soft and it's fun to flick up and down, and I like it. Check out the link in the description to get your own pair of Liberty Air 2 Pros. So far, he's starting in very disconnected falsetto. The top notes are quite a bit louder because it's just really easy to get loud in falsetto up at around a C sharp. As he comes back down, you can hear the tone color kind of change. That only happens if you're pulling that falsetto-y kind of place down rather than letting it mix back into chest voice. So I always say that I'm trying to get like as even of a sound as possible so that people can choose to do things like this, because this is like a choice to get stuck in falsetto rather than to mix it back down.
Sleep now under my skin, mate. Show you try to conjure the wind and ease my mind.
So he's not enunciating very much as a stylistic choice. He's barely moving his mouth, which I think in all styles of singing, even when you want to enunciate pretty well, it's good to minimize movement. So I like that he's doing that on a technical level, but it is because he's just kind of staying here and he's kind of mumbling everything all the way through, like we're not able to understand it as well. But that's one of the reasons that he has the style that he has, right? Like if he enunciated everything, it would be a totally different delivery and it probably wouldn't make as much sense in the context of the song. And that's the tone change that happens when you actually come back down to chest voice. Now, I bet that he's capable of letting that happen a little bit quieter, but in a voice lesson, that's what I would be trying to look after is like, okay, you proved that you can do this sound. Now you proved that you can do this other one that's coming down into chest voice. Now can you come back down to chest voice, but have it be a little bit more gradual? And just keep testing all of these different colors to prove that everything is intentional.
Somebody call out to your brother, he's calling out your name. Oh, hiding under the covers with no one else to blame. Oh.
So now that he's singing in more of a full voice, he's still not like moving his mouth too much. He's really minimizing the movement. He's minimizing the movement of all of these muscles in his throat, in his head, and like everything that is not necessary for creating the sound. I really think that minimizing movement is such a useful way to relax, right? Like if we just consciously stop moving all of these muscles, then we can be aware if one of them does grab and say, hey, I want to help the production, when we know that it's not really necessary for that muscle to help the production.
You couldn't help out your own neighbor, you couldn't tell it to his face. You were fucked up by the blame. You cower in the corner, confide in your father, let it out inside.
Good. So all of those full voice things, I think that he was doing in such a well-balanced way. Like, he didn't have to get quite as loud like when he came back down to chest that first time. So again, like, with this, I'm seeing he's checked off all of these boxes that kind of prove to me he can make all of these different colors. And good, well-balanced voices are flexible and able to make all of these sorts of choices and play between volumes. It's not like he's just locked into making this one sound and he's choosing when to use it. Plus, I think it just sounds really good. Like, he's got a really nice tone to his voice up on this bridge area between the C sharp and his F sharp, where he's spending most of the time in this last phrase. It just sounds really, really good. Like, he's got this beautiful tone in that area.
Let it pass.
And then he goes back into that flipped place, falsetto-y.
Sleep now under my skin. Show you trying to conjure the wind.
I mean, that's barely more than a whisper. Sleep now. Even what I just did is probably more production than what he's making. There's a lot of air coming through. It's not very loud. I think a lot of times we hear a fully produced track when people go into falsetto, and it sounds as loud as the rest of everything else they do because of how editing works and compressors work and how just all of that side of things works. And we try to create just as loud of a sound in falsetto as what we're hearing, but what he's making is like barely any energy. So whenever you're going into more of that released falsetto light kind of place, back off on the volume. See if you can find the quietest place possible. And I would go so far as to let it start falling apart, basically. If you go quiet enough that it just totally stops working, then you know you've went a little too far, and then you can pull it back. But almost everyone that I work with is giving a little bit too much at the top end, at least when they're first starting.
Somebody call out to your brother. He's calling out your name. Oh, hiding under the covers with no one else to blame.
It does sound like it doesn't hurt for him to do that, but I'm wondering if that sound, if he did it a million times in a row, if it would start wearing him out. That's kind of the sound that you can just sprinkle onto songs, and even if it doesn't feel like incredible, you're only doing it for a teeny second, and then most of the rest of the song feels really good, and it kind of balances it out. So I'm saying, like, what he's doing, it probably is really efficient. Like, he's probably just good at it and has figured out ways to make that sound without it wearing out too much of his vocal capital. But at the same time, if you are doing it in a way that's a little less efficient, it's still a useful sound. Like, if it's telling the story that you want it to, and it fits within the greater scheme of things, you just need to figure out how much you can use those sounds that don't feel totally amazing without, like, totally wrecking your voice, right? Because maybe that sound, if he does it 4 times, it feels terrible, so he only does it 3 times in the song. That's not true, but it might be for you.
By the blade,
Look at that face. Perfect. Blame! And then he puts the little distortion on at the end, but it's this beautiful vowel. And that's on his F sharp. So most guys have a bridge somewhere between D and F sharp. And on the bridge is usually the most difficult part of your range to sing in. So we need to have way more perfect vowels and kind of like ideal technique in that area than at other parts of our range. And what he just did, I think, is like the perfect example of what your face should look like when you're going up to that. Just here. Blame. Which is kind of different from how you just speak it. Blame, blame, blame. At least I kind of go a little bit wider, and that's part of my accent. So a lot of voice training is finding out what your speech accent sounds like, and which of those vowels are helpful for singing, and which of them you kind of have to counter. Because if I go up, blame, that doesn't feel as good, so I have to kind of counter it. Blame! I think that he's figured that kind of stuff out in his voice.
in the corner, confiding your father. Let it out and say, you cower in the corner, confiding your father.
Yeah.
Let it pass away.
Yeah, what he's doing is like just no effort. Those distortion sounds, just how much he's doing them proves how easy it is. I wish I could have like Melissa come on and say what exactly is happening with it, because I'm not totally sure with it, but like I've been to conferences before where people have made that exact sound and people have been like, yeah, that's awesome. So maybe it's kind of closer to the hybrid scream. I'm not sure. Let me know what you think below, but I do know that like what he's doing sounds really, really easy. Yeah, he plays with dynamics really well.
Wait there, pull yourself out of this state, dear. Acknowledge that you are fake here. From there on you might just grow.
He gets a lot of the style from kind of unevenness, right? Like it doesn't sound perfect all the way through in terms of like the most even vowels, the most even all of these things, but there is this sense of continuity with all of the colors that he's using. And so I think that a lot of people are kind of scared of making sounds like that because to them in the moment it doesn't sound finished, but like he's telling this awesome story using that different palette and it works really, really well. Where I think that a lot of people might be making similar sounds and they might be like, that doesn't work. That's not the sound I want to make. And so they'll run away from making music and then they'll never get the experience telling stories. So it's like, whatever colors you're using, just make music. Like, you have to get past that. You couldn't help out your neighbor. You couldn't tell it to his face. You were fucked up by the blame. Oh. I talk a lot about dropping the jaw. You can see for like most of what he's doing right now, he's not really dropping his jaw too much. But as soon as he gets up into the area that it matters and he's giving it actual voice, he's getting some volume, he's singing on the folds, whatever you want to call it, he drops his jaw. It's like, it just doesn't work when you're singing in full voice to not drop your jaw like that. But all the other parts, like he's not giving it enough energy for him to need to drop the jaw. And so he's figured out how to find a balanced everything below your vocal tract with a vocal tract that's closed, that doesn't have very much space at the front, right? Like with that being the constant, he's adjusted the other parameters of vocal fold resistance and of airflow to make what he's doing work. But like if you wanted to start getting louder, it stops working. So again, everything has a situation that it'll work well for, and you can balance all of these things, but there are a few rules that just like seem to help most people well enough. And one of those is dropping the jaw like that. Like pretty much everyone who sings well on their bridge will go into that place. Somebody call out to your brother. He's calling out your name. Whoa. Hiding under the covers with no one else to blame. Whoa. Oh. You couldn't help out your own neighbor. You couldn't tell it to his face. See, he's letting it break all over the place. He's phenomenal. Like, he sounds so good. And just the emotional involvement in what he just did, like, it all worked really, really well for me. I loved hearing him go back and forth between the screamy bits and the vibrato, and it's like these worlds that you don't really hear touching too much, and he's just seamlessly going back and forth. Man, he is good. But like those bits that were just totally falling apart and you could hear cracks and stuff, it's part of the story that he's telling. If every time that he heard himself crack like that, he was like, no, I gotta go redo that whole section, he would never be able to get involved in the way that he's doing this. And it's so common for me to work with someone and they'll like be involved emotionally or something, and something will go a little bit wrong, from unexpected from what they were thinking was going to happen, and then they'll just stop and like throw the whole thing away. You can't build on yourself if you're just stopping yourself every time, and like some of those imperfections become the things that audience members will love the most, right? Like I don't know if in the moment he was like, I don't really love that sound or whatever, or if he doesn't like that sound, but I freaking love that sound. And a lot of people will hate that sound when they hear themselves make it, but like I will love it. So take solace in the fact when you're practicing that if you make a sound that you might not care for, Sam will probably like it, and use that to just keep going. Just keep practicing. You are backed up by the blame. Yeah, and then he ends it without resolving, so that's just so fun, which is going to get this song stuck in my head forever. Yeah, that ending, I thought, especially, was just fantastic, but that wouldn't make as much sense if he hadn't built up for it, if he hadn't built up to it with all of the really quiet stuff that he had done earlier in the track. So he is exceptional. Like, he is a really good vocalist. He went up to the A, like that plus hearing the distorted sound on top of it makes me think it probably is more of that hybrid scream, which is like a little bit of Fry scream and a little bit of actual regular singing and stuff. I'm not the professional with scream stuff. I know enough to know when that's going to be a successful sound, and that sounds like he's going to be able to do it all day. Like one of my teachers, Dean, he tells the story about how he was in, I think, Estonia, and he saw a busker performing, and he was making this exact sound for like hours, and he just sat there and watched him and tried to figure out how to make the sound. His vocal tone never deteriorated as he was making that exact sound. Matt's really good. I'll have to listen to him more. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment below. Go check out the links in my description and ring the bell so that you can get notified of any of my videos as soon as they get uploaded. Thank you so much. Bye.